Hey, hope your day is going well. James here, and in this video I want to give you 10 strategies to make you a better presenter. It doesn't matter if you're recording a video like this one, or you're talking on air, live, or maybe you're recording a podcast. If you follow these 10 simple strategies, it will make you a flawless presenter. So, truth be told, I've been presenting different forms of media for probably 15 years now. Do I consider myself an expert, or do I consider myself the best presenter in the world? No, of course I don't. I started out doing live radio when I was about 16 in 2003. I then progressed on to doing videos like the one you're watching now in about 2008, 2009, 2010. Since then, I've gone on to record podcasts. I've produced podcasts. I've been an owner of a radio station, and I've helped thousands, literally thousands and thousands of people launch their broadcasting careers online. I listen to a lot of radio. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So really, these are the 10 things that I think make a good presenter. Now, they might differ for you, but if you can follow these 10 simple principles, I think you'll be well on your way to becoming across better on air, to coming across well on camera. And it's not rocket science. And of course, the 11th principle, which I'll mention now and I'll mention it again at the end, is just practice. Make sure you do it over again and again and again. And the more practice you have, the better you'll become talking to camera, the more likely you are to come across better down the microphone. And overall, the more fun you're gonna have. So let's dive straight in. Okay, so thing number one really is quite simply knowing your audience. If you don't have a good understanding of who you're actually trying to reach, then you're kind of screwed from the get-go, because you don't know what sort of content you should be creating, you don't know how you should be speaking. I always say start with your audience. Have a firm understanding of who your audience is, what they like, and what sort of stuff they want to listen to or watch. And if you understand that, you'll be on your way to making you shape your content or shape your output around them. Number two is talk directly to the listener or to the viewer. Now, you'll be noticing my language since the beginning of this video. I'm not saying, hey guys, or hello everyone, or just kind of talking vaguely. I'm specifically talking to you at the other end of their camera. Although I'm just sort of sat here in my spare room, talking to a camera with no one around me, I think it's important to remember that the person on the other side of the lens, or the other side of the screen, or the other end of the headphones, or whatever it might be, the conversation, as far as they're concerned, is between yourself and that person. So there is no camera there, or is there a microphone? There's no wires involved. It's just you and them. So try and be as direct as possible. Always remember, talk directly to the listener. You're talking to that one person. You're not talking to a big group of people. That was a bit strange. Where were my arms going at? Remember to be yourself. Don't feel the need to change your personality, and don't feel the need to change your voice. I see a lot of people going into radio, especially, where they have this perception that radio DJs need to sound a certain way, and they've got to be like, hey, this is a radio station and I'm a big cool DJ. Or people go onto the news, or people go in front of a camera and they assume they have to suddenly become a serious news reporter. Now, the truth is, you don't change yourself, right? Your voice as it is just now is absolutely fine. You don't need to sound a certain way. You don't need to have a certain personality on camera or behind the microphone. The one thing I would say is there's no harm in elevating yourself. Be enthusiastic and try and bring some energy to the table, but do not change who you are fundamentally as a person just to appear cooler or to appear different, or because you think that you have to come across a certain way on a camera or behind the microphone. Rubbish. Number four is give each show or each video you're doing 110%. Goes back to what I just said before. You have to elevate yourself a little bit, because quite often, especially if you're listening versus watching, you can't read that person's body language. So you need to think about how you're coming across. And if you just sit there and kind of read this stuff in monotone and don't really give it any energy, it's just not the same. There's no excitement in my voice. If you just sat there being monotone, it's boring. No one wants someone who's boring. So make sure you're bringing the energy to the table and give each show your all. Give it 110%. You can't go wrong with that tip. So tip number 5, you're on air and it's your responsibility and it is your job, okay? This is about accepting ownership over what you're saying, how you're saying it, and ultimately accepting ownership over the listener's response to what you're saying. You've got to remember, if you're sat behind a microphone, especially if you're broadcasting live, respect the fact that there are rules and regulations. Sometimes if you're doing stuff online, the cool thing is there's not, right? But the main thing I want to get across here is that it is your job to make sure that this presentation, whatever it might be, whatever form of media you're presenting, is a success, right? It's not the listener's job to understand what you're saying. It's not the listener's job to have a certain response to a video. It's your job to try and encourage that response, or your job to try and get that information across to them. Really, really important. Point number 6, come prepared. What I mean by this is if you have a script, make sure that you pre-read it before you go on air. Maybe you're doing an interview with someone, well, have a look through those interview questions, do your research on that person. Or if you have notes, maybe just a bulleted list, just refresh your memory of what you wrote down about a specific topic or a specific subject that you're going to start talking about before you're actually starting to talk about it. Just to kind of keep your mindset in check. It's really important as a presenter that you remember what you're talking about and you don't start going off on tangents, or even worse, just kind of making it up as you go along. For example, this video I'm recording right now, I have a series of bullet points so I can remember each and every single point of topic that I want to discuss. So then all I have to do is sit and go through that list of bullet points, make sure that I'm talking about each one of those bullet points with as much passion and as energy as I can, and I can't really go wrong. I'm sticking to the plan and I'm making sure that I thought this stuff through rather than just kind of making it up on the spot. And that goes for anything that you're recording, anything that you're broadcasting live. It's always a good idea to have at least a rough outline, some show notes, a rough plan of what it is you want to do. For some people, writing a script is really important, and I'm going to be doing another video in the coming weeks about how to script a radio show, how to script a podcast, and also give you some free downloadable templates that you can't go wrong with. However, scripting is not for everybody. In fact, personally for me, I really struggle with actual formally worded scripts. I personally much prefer a bulleted list. So again, it just goes down to what works for you and your style of presentation. But having some preparation is always really important. Okay, number 7 is get good at cross promotion. Now, when I say cross promotion, it can mean many things. It can mean if you're live on the radio, talking about what show is coming up later, what show happened before you, giving your colleagues relevant shout outs, and making sure that you're selling the listener on staying tuned to your radio station. If you are doing some videos like this one, it might be referencing other videos that you've just done or that you've got coming up the following week. It could be if you've got a podcast talking about a guest that you've got coming up on the next show, or talking about the fact that the listener needs to subscribe for more episodes. Cross promotion is really just about promoting and selling the listener on the idea of staying tuned, the idea that they can consume more content, promoting your colleagues or your friends' content, and just generally getting into the habit of being a good salesperson. Now, this isn't necessarily saying you're selling products, you're selling services to the listener. It's really selling the listener the idea that they need to keep consuming more content, whether it's podcasts, radio, video. It can work on any of these mediums or even live streams. But the point of the matter is you need to be making sure that you get into the habit, so you're not even thinking about it logically, you just subconsciously do it, of cross-promoting various different other ways that they can listen, or shows that are coming up, etc. Number 8 is giving your community a voice. Now, there's so many different ways that you can do this. If you are engaging mainly with your audience online, it's just about responding to their comments, tweeting back. If you're broadcasting live, it's about shouting people out, calling out their names, talking about what they are up to in their lives, and really giving your audience the chance to have a human connection with what you're talking about. So they actually feel like they're part of the show. They feel like they're part of what you're talking about as a presenter. And you can apply this to absolutely any medium. Doesn't just have to be radio. It could be people watching on your YouTube channel. It could be people engaging with you on social media platforms. But allowing your listeners to become involved and reeling them into that experience and really communicating with them is a fantastic trait of any presenter. Okay, number 9 is never be boring. Now, it doesn't matter what sort of content you're trying to create. You've got to make sure that you're engaged with the person who is watching or listening to you. And you've got to try and always remain enthusiastic, even if you're talking about something that perhaps isn't the most exciting thing. You've got to try and bring your passion to the table. And that's so important, because I think, if you don't come across as enthusiastic, if you don't come across as passionate, people are going to just switch off really, really quickly. So you might have had the worst day ever, right? But your job, as soon as you get behind this microphone or in front of this camera, is to be happy and exciting and positive and bring some excitement to the table, especially if what you're talking about is fun. And ultimately, if you're not boring, it's going to make the show or the bit of content you're creating much more fun. So remember, never ever be boring. Okay, to wrap things up finally, number 10 is be a good active listener and don't be afraid to take feedback on board. Now, when I say a good active listener, I mean being able to actually listen back to your own content, whether that's a show, you record it and you play it back to yourself, or you watch back videos you've created, or you listen back to audio that you've recorded, whatever it might be, and just see how you are. Like, how do you come across? Are there bits where you've kind of started rambling on about something that's quite irrelevant? Are there other parts where you've maybe been tripping over your words and maybe people couldn't understand what you're saying? Also, how do you come across? How is your pace? Are you talking too quickly? Are you talking too slowly? Or are you talking just the right speed? But the more you can listen back to yourself and critique your own performance, the better you'll become ultimately. And of course, don't be afraid to ask other people for feedback. Sometimes the internet can be a really cruel place. If you can get professional feedback, it's always going to be better than just reading the troll comments. There are going to be people who obviously will comment on stuff. Might be negative, might be positive. It's always good to get nice positive comments, but sometimes the negative ones can be a bit crazy. So I wouldn't always advise you to necessarily just rely on the general public's perspective. But if you can get professional feedback from your peers, your colleagues, from other people who are involved in your industry, or even just approach people and say, look, hey, can you critique my work? Or can you critique my podcast, my radio show, my videos? More than often, people will be happy to actually give you that feedback. And it's really, really important, especially if you can go and get some professional advice. And finally, let's finish on the first thing that I mentioned, which is practice, practice, practice. The more you can do stuff, the more you can become confident in front of the camera or happy behind the microphone, the more you'll be doing a good show for everyone involved, for yourself, for your listeners, for your viewers. And ultimately, it's just one of these things. You get the knack of it over time. You'll develop your own style. A lot of people are scared when they first think, oh God, I've got to present a video, or I have to present a radio show or a podcast, or I've got to be interviewed by someone, and kind of seize up, and they're just freaked out by the whole process. Relax into it. Don't relax into it too much, because it's always good to have sort of be on the edge of your seat a bit, because I think that kind of helps come across as, like I said before, not be boring. You want to be upbeat and enthusiastic. But ultimately, you've got to just remember that it's just a camera on a tripod, or it's just a microphone on a boom arm. There's nothing scary about this, and just be yourself. Have fun with it. So hope you have enjoyed this little video, which is my 10 top tips for being a good presenter. Maybe you have some different suggestions. Maybe you've got some cool ideas of how people could become really good presenters. I'd love to hear them. So maybe you could put them in the comments below. That would be great. I'd be really interested to hear your suggestions or your ideas on what makes a good radio, TV, or podcast presenter. Thanks very much for watching this video. As ever, if you could give me a thumbs up and a like, it means a lot to me, and I really enjoy making these kinds of videos to help you out, and I'll speak to you soon. All right, take it easy. Bye for now. Hey, before you go anywhere, I have a quick question for you. Do you have a podcast? And if you do you want to book more interesting, high-profile guests on your show? Well, if you answered yes to either of these questions, I'd love to invite you to come and join our community over at matchmaker.fm. Matchmaker is a service that connects awesome podcasts just like yours with incredible and high-profile guests that make for really interesting conversations. It's really straightforward to get started and completely free to sign up. Just connect using your LinkedIn, Facebook, or Google account, and then you can begin connecting with guests based on their area of expertise, location, and much more. If you haven't checked it out already, go to matchmaker.fm, get started. It's just like Tinder, but for podcasters.